Welcome, deviants. No, not those deviants, the other deviants to Geek Salad's Retro Movie Reviews from the Geek Salad Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike, and I'm a little bit of both, actually.
Yeah, okay. And tonight we are talking all about the MCU movie, The Eternals, but can't do this alone. So I am eternally grateful, see what I did there, to welcome back to Retro Movie Reviews, Derek and Laurel of the Midnight Myth Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back.
Hi.
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So excited. I am so excited. We always have a great conversation when you guys are on. So tell the audience a little bit about the Midnight Myth.
Sure. The Midnight Myth podcast was started almost 5 years ago. We're going on 200 episodes. And our mission is really to spread the good word about history, mythology, and philosophy, and how all of those things are bubbling up through all of the popular culture that you love to consume. So we talk about movies, TV, sometimes literature and musical theater, and how all of those are strung together with these great universal themes.
Awesome. Yeah. And you guys, I've said this before, but you'll have one of the most interesting topic sources of podcasts I've ever heard. You don't just talk about movies, you talk about everything behind those movies. And I love that. And I really feel like The Eternals is a great discussion point. So, so why did you guys pick The Eternals? We gave our guests the option to pick their movie. So
I really picked it. I have a lot that I want to say about it. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I have a lot of thoughts about the MCU that I've kind of just been building up in me that I just really would love to get out. I know we're all fans of the MCU here. I would love to know what you both think of it too. That's another reason. I'm just curious to think, it is the most probably maligned Marvel movie in the entire MCU, save for maybe Edward Norton's Incredible Hulk. So I'm just curious to see what you both think of it. We just recently had a baby. There's a pandemic. We don't go to the movies. So we waited a long time to see The Eternals till when it was on Disney Plus. And I was really hooked by the trailers, and I'm really excited to dig into it.
Awesome. Well, I guess Mike, then we gotta talk about how we thought about it. So I'll start.
We were actually really, really close to doing a review of The Eternals earlier, but we decided to not do it.
It was so Mike and I both saw it in the theater, but not together. Yeah. So what ended up happening was we were going to do it as kind of like a secondary review after a review, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't had time to digest it. I need to form an opinion. And since the first time I've seen it twice more. I watched it with my kids a few weeks ago when it first premiered on Disney Plus, and then I watched it again for this review. I'm really digging it. I won't go as far as to say it is top 10 MCU for me. I understand why some people do not like this movie. I totally understand, and I feel like as a fan, my forcing people to like this movie is gatekeeping, and I'm not going to do that. I really enjoyed it, but that's because I'm a fan. I didn't read the Eternals comic books, but I get it. I get what this movie was trying to accomplish, which was not get to Eternals 2.
Yeah.
To open a new doorway.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Mike?
I was so excited for this movie. I totally dug the trailers. I was like, they're going to do something brand new. This is something that the MCU really hasn't touched on before. So excited. Let's just say my excitement did not match up with what I saw. I think concept-wise, what they were trying to do, the visuals absolutely stunning, fantastic. Execution, C-. I have a lot of issues with, especially a lot of there's a storytelling. Some of the characters I was not a fan of. Well, other characters I'm a massive fan of.
Yeah.
This one, I was hoping the second viewing would kind of maybe maybe push some of my faults to the wayside. It made what I liked better, but what I didn't like, it made them kind of worse. So
understandable. Guys,
Well,
your initial thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have gotten you guys out of the way, because I honestly I was nervous we were going to come in and you guys were going to be like, "Why did you pick this awful movie?" And in general, we both like it. I will say, Mike, the point you just made about how a second watch made the faults get faultier and the highs get even higher, like that really, I felt like hit on my experience as well. Overall, I also dig this movie. I think it takes some big swings. I think it makes some big misses in doing that, but also is trying to do something interesting and brings some really beautiful things to the MCU that it wasn't doing before. So I appreciate it. I admire it. I'm excited to see if any of those things stick to the MCU.
that's fair. So I did a little Rotten Tomatoes score check, and I'm going to list some Rotten Tomatoes scores of some Marvel movies that, in my opinion, are at least average, if not below average. Now, whether that holds true and everyone feels the same is up for debate. But I picked 4 Marvel movies that I just think are, at best, okay. So Thor: The Dark World has a 66 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Ant-Man, 83. Doctor Strange, 89. Makes no sense to me. Ant-Man and the Wasp, 87.
Wow, I didn't realize that was that high.
Yeah.
87. Probably my least favorite Marvel movie, and I think one of the least successful. And then the worst score, The Eternals, 47. So 47 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
And that just, like, I don't understand our relationship to Marvel as just the huge film project of our time, where you can take a movie like The Eternals, which is doing very different and fresh and interesting things, and granted, not all of it works. Specifically, right. Like for me, I don't understand the third act Sprite. I don't understand why she just suddenly is in love with Icarus. They really tell us that. We never get to see it. I guess spoiler wall. I don't understand why she's willing to kill Cersei for this love and all of Earth for this love. Nor do I understand that all she really wanted to be was a human. That didn't come clear to me. And then why does Cersei reward her by making her get her this when she was stabbed in the back? Like, none of that really works. But like, I could probably have Kingo disappearing.
Yeah.
Very strange that he's just not in the third act. But I could probably list off similar, if not worse, faults in the other movies. Why does this one get picked on as the MCU property? Because it's beautiful, it's interesting, it has some really interesting themes. And I have a theory, and I don't know if it's correct. Movies like Thor: The Dark World, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man and the Wasp, one of the reasons I don't like them, they're not really about anything. They're very hollow. They can be fun, you can enjoy them, but they don't really say much. They don't say too much about their heroes or the world or the MCU. Well, The Eternals is saying a ton. And I wonder if that makes MCU fans a little uncomfortable. They're like, I want just some good escapism. And here is this movie that's deconstructing the Old Testament and telling us that maybe God is not worth following. And maybe that makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So I love what you're saying, Derek. Now, yeah, especially with the Ant-Man movies, I really enjoy the Ant-Man movies, but I don't regard that as upper echelon MCU either. The first movie is there to introduce a character and a concept which will carry through to the end game. Thor: Dark World is dull. Its biggest crime is that there's nothing exciting about it except for Chris Hemsworth and
Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston. Thank you. I couldn't remember his name. The other thing too, and now I got to get on my soapbox here, is how film criticism has changed in the last 2 years, especially when it comes to the Rotten Tomatoes aggregate. Any and I apologize to anybody out there who is a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. Any clown with a blog can essentially now be a certified Rotten Tomatoes critic. And we have friends, we have podcast friends who are Rotten Tomatoes critics. And I do not mean that of them, but there's a lot of people who took this movie and saw, I don't see a whole lot of white faces there. You know, go woke, go broke. And that, I feel, overall was kind of I think there was an intention once people started getting more images of the movie, when they finally see the movie, and they just kind of shut off when your primary lead is an Asian woman. And I mean, let's be honest, the white dudes in this movie don't do a whole lot. Icarus, Richard Madden, and I had a conversation with Mike about this as he was rewatching it yesterday. Unless you just were able to try to stunt cast getting the, Robb Stark and Jon Snow back on screen together for a 1 minute, I don't see the point of casting. I really don't see the point of casting Richard Madden in anything. I don't.
It's not good. It's it's rough.
Yeah.
He's dull. I can
It's
understand.
rough, yeah.
There is a lot of surface tension where you can see that it's eating at him, that he was not chosen. Ajax didn't choose him.
Yeah.
Arishem didn't choose him to lead.
There are some actors that could pull that off. Richard Madden is not one of them. I
No.
just found Icarus to be an incredibly dull character and flat.
What was with the Reed Richards streak? Also, I thought they didn't age. It's like,
He was
oh,
born
the
with gray
Hanging
hair.
Gardens of Babylon. I've got
No,
my
it's the touch
beautiful
of gray.
hair.
You have to get that. You have to get that dye from the store just to go for that distinguished look.
Exactly.
Trying to be
This
respected,
is how
trying
I
to be
pass
leader.
for aging as an immortal.
And Derek, I was so excited for what they would do with Sprite, and I was so incredibly disappointed with what they did with her. She could have been so interesting, but the problem is, I also understand why they turned her human at the end, because they're probably not going to have Eternals 2 for another 5 years. She's supposed to be ageless. It's not going to work. You had to get rid of her somehow.
Yeah,
So-
that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me ask, this goes out to all three of you. Has anybody read an Eternals comic book? Any of them?
Oh, and
Yeah.
I've been meaning to read the Neil Gaiman run because we're fans, so it really should be on our.
It's-
The Neil Gaiman stuff is amazing. I'm sorry, Derek, I cut you off. What were you?
No, you're good. It's the only MCU property I'd gone into completely fresh. Never read a comic.
Right.
And I was kind of excited about that. I'm like, I don't know anything about the Eternals. Maybe they popped up in a story here or story there. I knew that they were connected to Thanos and the Deviants in the comics, and was really excited to see what they would do with it. And generally speaking, I'm excited to see where these characters go in the MCU.
Yeah. So the reason I ask only is because especially with the Neil Gaiman comic book, the impetus of Sprite is wanting to be human. And, not to give anything away, because I really feel you need to read the Neil Gaiman books. Sprite is living life as a child. Just like the Sprite in this movie, they want to grow up by any means necessary. Now, I don't know exactly how deep the Earth is nothing more than a nesting egg for the next great celestial. I don't know if that actually appears in any of the comic books or not.
Actually, just a quick aside on that one. They end this movie with the celestial is a giant marble celestial is appearing. And then a giant celestial appears in the sky, and what the hell is this? And what's this gonna set for the rest of the MCU? Next MCU movie, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Open up the multiverse. Okay, nobody's talking about the Celestials anymore.
Yeah.
You know what though? You got to
Don't
be
worry
so
about that.
shell shocked. If first of all, if you were somebody who got blipped out of existence for 5 years, I'm sorry. Your bar for being surprised by what shit the universe is going to throw at you at this point, it's It's really low.
Yeah.
So, that does speak to a broader like criticism I have of the MCU, especially post Phase 1, which is where are the regular people? Like they tend to not matter. We tend to not see what they go through. And whereas in the first phase, that is something that is a theme throughout all the movie, that like regular people get affected by the heroes and their villains and their battles.
Yeah.
And, so I do think it'd be cool to know, like, hey, we all now know that there's a celestial god watching over Earth that's going to judge it. Like that, even if I blipped in and out of existence, I'd be like, oh my God, how much weirder is this going to get? Like you're just like, how insignificant am I? That has to have a huge ripple effect.
Right.
And then
who knows?
Spider-Man walking around.
We haven't seen Spider-Man yet.
We know
I'm
that.
sorry.
We know.
Okay.
You can
They have been to a movie,
avoid,
Mike.
you can only avoid so many spoilers.
Yeah. It honestly, at this point, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's the third. I think it's the third highest domestic grossing movie of all time now. So
just past Avatar.
Yep. So
Hey.
there's that. We get to celebrate that, but still,
Nice.
sorry, not an Avatar fan.
No, me neither.
But there is a lot to like about this. But again, I don't think there's going to be an Eternals 2. I think this finally like kickstarts the Jim Starlin galactic universe with. We got Star Fox.
I was going to say, as long as Harry Styles makes the cut, I'm good.
What fantastic casting that was. It took me a minute. I'm like, is that? No, that's Harry Styles.
Yeah, it is.
That's Patton Oswalt voicing.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God. I remember reading something before that. I think Jim Starlin actually was like, well, my casting pick made it. And Patton Oswalt retweeted that, like, I'm so honored. I'm like, what is he talking about? And then, like, that night, I went to go see it. First of all, and this is one of the flaws in the movie, the biggest flaw in the movie for me, the animation of Pip. Yeah. It's like, I can't believe it didn't look great.
Yeah, and I know it's like, it's only on screen for
2 minutes?
30 seconds, 2 minutes, yeah. But yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah. But the voicing was fantastic. But this kickstarts what happens next, and this is maybe where you get Galactus. Maybe this is where you start meeting all of these Marvel celestial beings, like the In-Betweener, and I actually have the official book of the Marvel Universe that came out in the 80s. I could probably pull up all the galactic characters, but.
Yeah, maybe we'll see the Living Tribunal. That's always been one of my favorites.
Yep.
Quick question, though. I mean, just a curiosity. Does Patton Oswalt as Pip mean we are not getting a reprise of MODOK?
With Patton Oswalt as MODOK?
I think that'd be hilarious if they both sound alike. I mean, those characters wouldn't cross streams anyway. MODOK is for a completely different thing. Yeah. He's also an agent on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I don't know if he got soft rebooted out of that.
Yeah.
I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in general was soft rebooted.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing about the Eternals that I really liked, having only read the Neil Gaiman stuff and I read a little bit of the Jack Kirby stuff, and it was just so like, what am I looking at? Because this is 70s Jack Kirby, so it's all technology for where technology should not be. And you can definitely tell that this came from him getting fired from DC. He went into DC, did New Gods. They're like, this is stupid, get out of here. And then he essentially just scratched all the serial numbers off of the New Gods characters, threw them onto the Eternals, and this is where we went to. But the characters themselves are so malleable. It didn't matter that Makari is now played by a deaf woman. Sprite can be male or female. Icarus is not blonde. All of these characters have I feel like the actors, even Richard Madden, did a good job in inhabiting their characters. Now, some I wish I had seen on screen more than others. I feel like
I wanted more Fastos.
Yeah, more Fastos. Brian Tyree Henry is glorious. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is ironic about the movie is that one of its weaknesses is how many characters it's trying to give a full and complete and authentic arc to. But at the same time, one of its amazing strengths is how efficient it can be with some of those characters. Like, there's so little time that we spend with Gilgamesh and Thena, but the two of them are exquisitely drawn, I thought, and Gilgamesh especially. Like, when we lose him, it's devastating, even though he's been on screen for maybe like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just think they were able to accomplish so much in casting, in very small, subtle cues, and where sometimes the movie suffers in telling us instead of showing us, like Gilgamesh dropping the pie, like that is a show don't tell moment. Like, you want to try some pie, and then he drops the pie. Like that is.
Yeah, Andy and I were chatting. It's like Druig should be a really unlikable character, but his interactions with Makari make that such
so endearing,
powerful relationship.
They're like high school students.
Yeah.
They really are like they're teenagers. I love that. I love their relationship. But Druig is usually the bad guy. He's the evil Eternal. And that's where I was expecting this movie to go, was that Druig was going to, you know, be the one to do the big heel turn, and it turned out to be Icarus. Which,
I appreciated that, because I thought it was heading that way too. I think the marketing led us all that way. Even if you weren't someone who had read the comics before, you're like, that's the one who's going to betray everybody. But yeah, I appreciated that it took a different.
And Druig makes the first argument that, you know, Erishim's plan is actually nonsensical. So why would I have all of this power that I could just do this and this war is over? Why am I not supposed to save lives? Are we not here to help these people? Isn't that our entire mission? And that's what fractures the Eternals way back when the conquistadors are there in Mesoamerica, which brings me to like my main issue with this movie, which is it plays with some really terrible historical tropes that I just like deeply, deeply bug me. And if you would permit me, I'd like to slightly rant about it.
Go for it. It's your time, sir.
I'm gonna pull up my notes just to make sure that I don't get this wrong. So one overarching theme of this is Ancient Aliens was true. And as a guy that studied ancient history and believes in it and loves it, that really bugged me. So, and a few specific pieces of examples. When they're in Persia, and you see the Ishtar gates of Babylon. Those are the blue gates that are painted, which they do a really good job with recreating those and seeing Babylon. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon no longer exist. Some argue they never existed, but it really looks and feels like they're in Babylon and they're battling this monster, and it's really cool. And the date of 525 comes across the screen. They're in Persia 525. And Fastos, BCE, before the Common Era, or BC, some would just say. Fastos is inventing the plow. The plow was at least 500 years old at this point. Like, where's the food coming from to feed all the people in Babylon if they don't have plows, people? And the idea that Cersei has to create water so that they can irrigate. The people in the ancient Near East invented wheat. They invented that crop. They knew how to crossbreed different plants so that wheat exists, so that they had bread. They certainly knew how to move water from point A to point B. And like, there is this trope that ancient people were so barbaric and stupid when literally they created the foundation of all knowledge and all human civilization. You know, by 525 BCE, there were written law codes. You know, so it's like these were not savage societies. You know, 25 years after 525 is 550 of BCE. That's when Cyrus of Persia, Cyrus II, also known as Cyrus the Great, formed the world's first empire, the Persian Empire. He was the most powerful human being on the planet. It was a complicated, interconnected, huge society, one that made a huge imprint on the world that advances in writing, arithmetic, astronomy, you name it. And the idea that there had to be these aliens tinkering with that in order for this to happen bugs me. But in particular, when you look at other media for other ancient societies, the ancient people were dumb and savages. It only applies to people in the ancient Near East. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans are always sophisticated and smart. They're often British with these like Shakespearean dialects when they're at similar time periods that we're seeing in the ancient Near East. And it's just such a Western trope. Of course, the dumb people that are now in the modern day Middle East. So the ancient Near East is the term that you use with ancient history. We call this area the Middle East now. So of course they didn't know where water came from or how to move it. Of course they didn't know how to farm. It took these gods to show it to them. And that just that really sticks in my craw. And it just bugs the living heck out of me. End rant.
48%, huh? Tomatoes.
It's fair. Fair point.
It's all the historians on Rotten Tomatoes, just like, oh, I hear you, Derek.
Yeah, I wish there were more ancient Near East historians reviewing. And one of the things I was most excited about was seeing the Ishtar Gate. And I'm like, there's a character called Gilgamesh. They're gonna be in ancient Babylon. I can't wait to see this world reproduced and to see what it's like to have these heroes in it. And just the way it treated the regular people. And even when we see the regular people, there's a scene there, they can't sit and drink and dance without getting into a violent brawl where Druig has to then stop them all. Be like, oh yeah, they're so savage, they would just kill each other if it wasn't for us. And I'm like,
and you had the two guys trying to, pass off something cheap to Makari. He's like, oh yeah, they'll never get a hold of this. Really?
It's like they invented writing so that trade could happen equitably and fairly, people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's where writing came from. And it was invented long before 525 BC.
Yeah.
Nice. It's been a long time since I've studied ancient history, so I really do. I
Work like me.
Because it is really interesting, and I can definitely understand, taking issue with that. Yeah, sorry.
Fine. Yeah.
That's why everybody needs a Derek. Just keep you humble. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think the balance of it was funny. We talk about the balance of characters, how some our favorite characters kind of appear so late in the movie, or in the case of Kingo, just disappear for the entire third act. I actually did a little thought experiment today as I was watching it, where the second we're reintroduced to Makari on the ship, I paused. There's still an hour of the movie left. So she seems like she's just forgotten forever. She's there. She's there for the last hour. And I can't tell you how refreshing it is to see a speedster in a movie that doesn't have lightning bolts following them. Oh my, it's almost like she's fast. And that's all she needs to be.
And it's not also a space-time continuum.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll also say that's when my favorite part of the movie happens, is when we're reunited with Makari on the Domo, because that's when we find out that King Arthur is canonically, historically real in the MCU. And I'm stoked about it. Also very stoked about Black Knight. Although I know that Camelot 3000 is a DC property, so anybody who's getting a meeting to pitch my script for it, I would.
Yep. And I just want to address a comment that just popped up on the screen here. You guys don't actually have a YouTube channel. You guys strictly podcast, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we're just on podcast platforms.
All right, cool. Well, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get them. Who was it? Brother of a Certain Age?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. That's where you can find them. We'll get all their plugs in at the end of our discussion as well. So thanks for watching.
Yeah, it's very possible there are other historical rants on your favorite podcast player. If you search possible.
Maybe.
Yes, but not as entertaining as yours.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, with the Black Knight, that's a weird thing. It's like the original Black Knight wielded Excalibur. Or something like that. Dane Whitman is just like an ancestor, which is, I think, what he was trying to tell Cersei before, she was carted off by the Six Eyes in space.
And I loved Kit Harington as Dane Whitman. I thought he was. I actually really enjoyed him.
Yeah, I thought he was very charming.
15 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end, and it's clear he's just there to set up something in the future.
With Blade.
Yeah, I like them. I wish I had more, and it wasn't just a, hey, guess what we're getting later.
The thing is that his story, Dane Whitman's story, doesn't fit with this Eternals thing. And we all kind of mentioned this. They're trying to tell a lot of story where, I'm one of those people. I didn't feel like the 2.5 hours. I didn't feel that 2.5 hours. I know, Mike, you said you did.
Yeah.
Guys, what do you think? Are you also on the, could they have cut out big chunks of this movie, or do you feel like it flowed okay?
I don't actually think there's a ton of fat on it. I think it is an adjustment to go into an MCU movie and see it move at a different pace, and I actually appreciate it. I remember watching it the first time and being like, this is awesome. And we have a baby, so we have to pause every 20 minutes to either go attend baby or make a bottle or whatever we got to do. So we never watch a movie straight through anymore. But I feel like the first act we were like, yeah, this is amazing. And then there was a point where we were like, yeah, I'm getting a little tired. And then it picked back up again. So for me, I think overall, I didn't feel like it was excessively long. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I feel that it did drag a little in the middle.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, in terms of if you compare it to the MCU, it is a little long and a little slow. Most MCU movies really quip along at a very, very fast pace. Even some of the longer ones like Endgame, which is a very long movie, the first time I saw it, I felt that movie was 25 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I think the Eternals deliberately slows itself down. And I think it really does so because it really wants the characters to shine. It just doesn't always accomplish that. There are really good scenes, when they're all, for example, at Faustus's house and they're all eating dinner.
Mm.
Is that scene 100% necessary for the plot? No, but I thought it was a really good one just to see the Eternals interacting, getting a sense of who they are. I think the pacing issue comes to me where the movie focuses on Cersei first and Icarus second. They're probably the least interesting of the two. And I think that's really where it kind of fails. I'm like, I'd watch a whole movie with Gilgamesh and Thena and what happened to them after they split. I'd watch a whole movie of that.
Yeah.
That was just really interesting and really cool.
Or finding out what was it that because when Festus leaves, they're like, oh, he turned his back on humanity. What was it that brought him back, that made him fall in love?
Yeah,
right.
Because that's an interesting story, right? It's not just that there's this whole piece missing and that feels like a plot hole. I don't care about a plot hole, but I care about there's interesting, very rich story to be told where you can see the true expanse of humanity or eternity, and that's exciting, and I want that. And that's my biggest disappointment about this movie is that I feel like there are a lot of missed opportunities. Yeah. And I really do like it. I think it's really exciting, but there are so many times watching it where I'm like, oh, give me just a little more, give me just a little bit more,
right.
of that, or flesh that out a little bit. That would be so great.
Well, when you think about it, also, this is the first time that the MCU has introduced us to a completely new set of characters as a group. We all raved about how they got to the Avengers. Each and every character was introduced somewhere else, brought together for this one movie. So yeah, Laurel, I agree with you. There's tons of little connective pieces. I would love if Disney Plus just puts out little 5-minute shorts of Tina and Gilgamesh just doing stuff around their Australian hut,
fermenting beer with their own saliva.
Yeah, or when he does hypnotize her. So so he can go to Tahiti. Great line, by the way.
And you know what? For Kingo left, but before the third act. But I mean, I just love Camille Nanjiani. I think he's fantastically talented. He's so funny, and his relationship with Karun,
it's beautiful.
When Karun at the end, he's when they're saying goodbye, and he's just speaking that, and it was moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a thought about that too, which I thought was a miss, and it is somewhat of a historical rant. So if you permit me to, so like I get
Lord,
I get why Kingo looks at Icarus and Cersei fighting and says, I can't pick a side here. This is my family. So if you're going to fight each other, I'm out. And there's a historical example of that, which is Kentucky in the Civil War. It said, we're neutral, right? We're not going to fight. We're just going to stay out of this whole thing. If you guys want to kill each other, when the dust is settled, come back to Kentucky and we'll figure out what's going on. But there's no way we're going to take up arms against Americans north or south. Well, eventually Kentucky had to choose, and it chose to fight for the North. So even though it sat out, it eventually had to come back and say, okay, what's right is right. And the Confederate Army, we can't tolerate you marching through Kentucky. We just asked you to leave us alone. So we're going to join and fight for the North. I felt like a big moment there for Kingo would have been like, all right, so mom and dad number 2 are fighting. I'm sorry, I can't be a part of it. And then eventually saying like, I can't sit this out and let all of these people that I love, that I've said depend upon me, that I make movies and entertainment for, I can't let them all die for Celestial. I would have just loved if he came back at the end of the 3rd act and been like, I'm sorry, I'm here. Even if it's like, how did he get there? Who cares? He just shows up to fight for humanity. I thought that would have been a huge moment there.
The space where that gets complicated is that the last thing he says before taking off is, I still have faith in Arishem. So if he did show up to fight, he probably would have shown up to fight for Icarus. He just said, turn against my family. So him sitting out is a space where the movie gets into the kind of murky waters of whatever metaphor it's trying to communicate, which you can read quite a few of them into this one. But I think the most obvious and surface level metaphor here is the pro-life or pro-choice debate. Do we or do we not abort the celestial baby? So yeah, it's complicated. The last thing he says is, I refuse to hurt any of you for my beliefs. So yeah, I just put that out there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. It really is a good point. There's a lot about this movie. Again, it's like, it could have gone 3 hours just so we can get more of that connective tissue. I will say this movie took risks that I wasn't expecting it to take, and that comes in the form of sex and sexuality in a way that a movie financed by Disney would not do. It was funny because when I was watching this with my kids, so my kids are 13 and 8, and you've got Cersei and Icarus lying naked on the beach, and my son just like turns his head like, no. It's like, okay, yep, okay, icky, great. I didn't have, because I was like, oh my God, I forgot about this. Oh, okay.
Very tasteful missionary.
Yeah, it was very tasteful missionary. But then with Fastos and his husband, no, first of all, I think that, Disney has always been like putting their foot in the water of, here's our first gay character. Here's our first gay Pixar character. Here's our first gay live action Disney character. And it's hinted at.
Yeah, and it's largely queer baiting.
It is, yeah. With this, it was like, this is a couple. This is a couple that kiss goodbye. And my son was like, oh, is that his cousin? Oh, no, buddy. No, that's his husband.
They were roommates.
Oh, okay. And my son hasn't had a chance to hang out in our theater circles, so
yeah, but good. It's good to show that and have it not even be commented on. It's kind of beautiful. Yeah. Like, this is a family. This is what a family unit looks like. Family units look all different kinds of ways.
And the fact that it came from one of the most entertaining characters in this movie, his delivery is so good, and even like, I was amazed just watching. I would love to see it without the special effects of just watching him move his hands as he's trying to build this stuff, because that was mesmerizing. I know that,
and he comes from theater, so that physical, the physicality of his performance is from his life on the stage.
Yeah. Oh, it was great, because I remember like hearing that about Benedict Cumberbatch having to learn different hand motions for Doctor Strange. So just watching Brian Tyree Johnson do that, I was like, ooh, oh man, I like this.
Yeah, it's really powerful. A call out line of his was, "I do not exist for Arishem. I exist for my family."
Yeah.
Yes.
Saying that with total feeling and power. And I was like, I feel that.
Yeah.
And when he's saying like, yeah, I'm not gonna go back to my husband and son and just watch them die in a few days.
Yeah.
I can't just stand there and do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say I didn't fight for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things
by the way, I love the fact that DC characters exist in the Marvel universe.
It broke my brain. Both times we watched it, anytime there was a Superman or a Batman reference, I was like, I can't handle it. The DC characters exist as characters in the Marvel universe. It hurts.
Well, for me, I'm like, there are probably more direct parallels to the Eternals to the Justice
League. Yeah.
So I felt like that was like a wink, like, you know, Icarus is clearly a Superman stand-in in many ways.
Yeah, he can fly and he's got laser beams out of his eyes.
We have a Flash, you know, like we have a cyborg and Faustus who can make all of these technologies and things like that. Athena and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
So to me, it was just this like nod, like, yeah, you know, we kind of just put the Justice League into Marvel, like, ha ha ha, look what we did. I thought that was pretty funny because if I'm honest, I'm a bigger DC fan than I am a Marvel fan when it comes to comics. So I loved it.
Justice League, erase, Justice League, Eternals.
And they managed to turn Superman evil.
Yeah.
Something that I know that the DCEU is like, had the biggest chub for so long that we need to turn Superman evil. I think, Derek, you and I have had conversations about this.
Push the button.
Yeah. The boys did it. They did it really well.
Yeah.
It's really compelling. The best character on The Boys is Homelander, and what if Superman were evil? We just don't need any more of it. You know, like, it's just not very interesting.
Yeah.
The idea if you had all power, would it corrupt you? Yes, it would. Great.
Yeah.
What makes Superman interesting is that he does not get corrupted by it. That's the very thing that makes it hopeful and inspiring. And the fact that they took Icarus and made him Superman and they literally called him Superman in the movie as a joke.
I don't wear a cape.
Yeah. Oh, no. I don't wear a cape in this Scottish accent.
That's excellent.
Thank you. And it turns out, sorry, he's a big jerk that would blow up the world.
Yeah.
And would kill his friends and family. You know, like the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, don't do this. Don't tear down the Red S. It's been torn down enough. You know, it's hard enough telling a story about someone that's genuinely good in a world that fights for the world, that's not cynical about the world. Like, that is something we all need right now.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like, we don't need any more. Like, and for Marvel walked the line really well with Captain America in the fact that Captain America is just all good, but they just put him in a more complicated world. And I just get disappointed with this, like tearing down a Superman. And the idea, like, if they didn't call him Superman, it probably wouldn't have bothered me as much as it did. But the fact that they called him Superman was just like, oh, great. And when they did that, I'm like, he's definitely the bad guy now.
I do kind of like that it's the handsome, strong, born leader white guy who is disappointed by the fact that he's not chosen to lead, and he's the promotion is given to a woman of color, and that is what sends him.
I mean, that's a good take.
Yeah,
that's a good take.
It is. And you know, Derek, you had mentioned earlier about that dinner scene they had with Gilgamesh and Athena, and I feel like the purpose of that was primarily to set up the disappointment of Icarus. It's the first time you actually see Icarus. It really stabs at him. He wasn't chosen. Yeah. Much like the thing with Sprite, that they were still making fun of her for just being a kid, like eternally stuck in a kid's body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you could see those frustrations, and it's not as apparent on the first viewing as it is on like my third viewing of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like that stuff needed to be there. I also like because I remember like the trailer, like doing that whole thing about, you know, who's going to lead the Avengers. Well, Perhaps I could lead them. And then everyone starts laughing. And then it's only to find out there's a line in there. Leave the Avengers. Ajax didn't choose you to lead us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just thinking about your take, that would make sense if Icarus didn't kill Ajax.
Yeah.
So like way before,
Yeah.
like if it was just his disappointment about not being chosen that drove him there, I think that would, I'd be more into that take. But like he murdered his mom, essentially. You know, like he committed matricide because he chose Arishem over Ajax well before he knew. He just assumed it would be him next.
Yeah. I was mostly making that as an offhand comment. I think it's like I think it's a dimension of the story that's being told, but I think you're right.
I mean, it's like all the pieces are there in this movie to be great. I think the frustrating thing is that it's not, that it's just good.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish it were great.
I will say, you know, one thing we've touched on lightly is just how beautiful the movie is. I think from an art direction standpoint, I actually truly love the way that they did the costumes and the symbols and the weapons and the sort of metal effect, but also just seeing Chloe Zhao's directorial eye, and the locations, the natural light. It was exciting to see Marvel scenes happen in not ideal light situations and how they get creative around that. You know, another movie that came out last year that was similar and how it responded to the lighting of the environment was Dune. You know, seeing these scenes take place like late sunrise and watching time and light shift in real time before you, I think is really cool. And seeing how environments respond to that and how actors respond to that. So again, I hope that's something that the MCU is willing to experiment with more in the future.
Marvel, get up the green screen. Just stop it. Get out of the green screen.
See what happens.
See the world.
See what happens when the conditions aren't ideal and what you can create in not ideal conditions.
Right. And I feel like this movie gave it absolute. This is the movie that actually had the license to do that. I think there are going to be certain movies, especially, you know, as we go back into space and Asgard and everything.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to see that, and it would feel weird to see that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Wakanda Forever might have more natural scenes. I don't know. I don't even know if that movie's getting released this year. So
yeah.
One thing that we haven't really touched on that I know I was texting with Andy today, and we were having a little debate on it, is I genuinely don't know the reason why they included Crow, the evolved deviant,
alpha deviant.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. But he's there to kind of form a threat before we realize it's Icarus. But then he just kind of shows up at the end, just kind of give Thena a brief moment. I think you could have done it with regular deviants. You didn't need this special. I think it just added on like 15 minutes that we didn't really need.
And it also opens up those questions about evolution and free will that the movie doesn't quite figure out how to stick the landing with, but are interesting. You know, one thing I was saying, another missed opportunity, I was like, wouldn't it be cool? And maybe this is cliche and dumb, but like, wouldn't it be cool if at the end of this, they realize that they're on the same team and they're both anti-Arishem and like, yes, they've been pitted against each other for generations and centuries on all these different planets. Why aren't they teaming up? So that's just a curiosity.
Well, I likened it to, when Mike and I were having this conversation, I likened it to like a sub boss in a video game. You need that, that extra set of obstacles. And while, you know, you could just have goons, in this case, like just the random deviants, having one alpha deviant there puts a little bit of extra, hey kitty, puts a little bit of extra weight on all of their struggles, that there's always going to be this thing that's going to kind of jump out at them, roar at them, and maybe steal their powers. I feel like without it, I just feel like, okay, well, we're still waiting on a villain. You needed a villain to carry you through the movie until the big reveal.
Yeah.
The thing about deviants, which is weird, is that in the comic books they are more humanoid.
Mm-hmm.
So like the deviant, like Alpha Deviant in his final form, would have been more closely aligned to like the game and comic book versus, you know, what essentially what do we get? We get CG, you know, hellhounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like Crow is manufactured in order to serve a directional narrative
Right.
like this, rather than really organically fitting the circumstances.
I mean, why else would the deviants get back together if there wasn't a threat? If you're going to, and it's important to scatter them throughout the world.
Or the Eternals, yeah.
Or the Eternals, pardon me, yeah. So not the deviants. So there needed to be a threat
I
to
would watch a movie of them getting the
Yeah.
man back together too.
You
That
know,
would be
like
interesting.
you needed to get them back together. And I thought, I like the idea that the problem with the deviants that Erisham says is that they evolved. He created these things to stem predators, and they became the apex predator. At the beginning of the movie, one of the first scenes is Cersei teaching about what? The apex predator.
Yep.
And the question is, who's the real apex predator? It's really the Celestials. You know, so like they are the ultimate apex predator because they're at the top of the galactic food chain, feeding on everything else. And I like that. Now, do I think it like skillfully navigates this? No. Do I think it's like it serves the plot more than it serves all of the characters at points? Yes. But broadly speaking, if like you think of this movie as a thought about evolution versus creationism, you know, there's an interesting thought there to me that the deviants evolved. The Eternals were created to do what? Never evolve. Well, what do we see them do in this movie? They evolve, but they don't evolve physically. They evolve spiritually, emotionally.
Mm-hmm. And
I thought that was an interesting, point counterpoint in terms of the theme. Is it great? No, I kind of like the alien hound dogs. I'm not going to lie. I thought they were really cool looking.
They are beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought they were interesting. Not knowing the comics about what the deviants were, I just knew they were linked to Thanos.
Right.
So I wasn't disappointed in that respect. Did it have to be? Could it have been any other threat that got them together? Yes. But I did like that they linked this one to evolution and to the theme of the apex predator. Because I really think that's what I took out of this. What if God is just a predator? You know, what if God's entire purpose is to feed on us and not worthy of our prayers and not worthy of us following? And to me, that is a whoa, God's the predator. You know, that is a narrative that I think is a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? It blew me away a little bit that they were willing to go there, that Disney was willing to go there.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't, Bad Religion writing a song for in the 1990s for 100 punk kids. This is Disney suggesting that God is a predator. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that is great. And it also suggests that the person you put your faith in when that's the case is Mama. Like, you put your faith in Ajax or you put your faith in Cersei, both who are given heavy maternal imagery or maternal association and symbolism. So I like it.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like this is the kind of movie that, the discourse around this movie is going to soften in the next 5 years. I don't by any means think this is a flawless movie. I'm with all of you. There are some pretty heavy flaws in here. Yeah. All in all, I really enjoyed it. I understand, again, why it's not everybody's brand of vodka, but I think that given, you put 5 years in between this and whatever else comes out in phase 4, I think people are going to give this a second look and go, why did I sleep on this movie? Which, I would love for that to happen. Whether or not it does, who knows? I mean, what are we seeing? I mean, we're seeing people like who are apologetic about Batman and Robin. So I guess
there'll be think pieces down the line that are like, is the Eternals the best MCU movie? And like, no, it's not. But it is worth further investigation. And this discussion that we've had tonight, I keep calling it the Eternals, but it's just Eternals, right?
It's just
Eternals.
yeah. The same.
Yeah. But over the discussion we've had tonight, the thing that we keep coming back to is like, yes, here's the flaws. Like, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. But I think the position that most people take on this movie comes down to whether you see the movie as greater than the sum of its parts or you get lost in the flaws. And both of those are completely valid and worthwhile ways to spend watching this movie. And I think my 2 watches of the movie were 2 different perspectives on that. I overall think that this movie is greater than the sum of its parts. I can list an issue that I have with probably every single scene, but I'm also left with an impression of being like really stimulated and thoughtful and having a deep connection to characters who spent very little time on screen with me. So I appreciate it. I admire it. I respect it.
Yeah. I like that. Unlike so many other MCU properties that are fun movies that are just pure escapism, and there's nothing wrong with that because life is freaking crazy and we need to escape sometimes, right? Yeah. Especially now. So there's nothing wrong with MCU being your escapist fantasy. What I liked about this one is that it really tried to be more than that. It really tried to say some interesting things about humanity, religion, creationism, patriarchy versus matriarchy. Is that the right? Yeah, that's the right term. Yeah. I think all of these things are really cool, and I hope that the MCU does not get discouraged by the frustrations around this movie, because I suspect you're probably right, Andy. Some of it's political, what you said earlier in this. Some of it is about, we don't like that it's not a white male hero, that it's a diverse cast. And I hope that they continue to take really big swings, because that's why I really wanted to do this with everyone here. I'm like, there's something to this movie. Is it great? No. But there is something to it, and I think that's pretty cool from a franchise that's been more or less kind of riding its own engine of, quippy characters that are sarcastic, that don't know if they want to be heroes, and then they become one in the third act. Nothing wrong with that formula. It's just, it's old now. And I like that this reinvented that formula.
Yeah. Mike?
Not my favorite movie, but as we've proven over the last almost hour here, is that while it's not a great movie, it inspires a lot more conversation than most MCU movies do. And I hope that the fact that they're really kind of going all in with the multiverse with Spider-Man and then Doctor Strange, I hope that they don't just kind of forget that, hey, wait, there's a giant stone celestial in the Indian Ocean. Right. There's a lot of things that happen in this movie that they really need to expand on.
Yeah. First of all, Derek, I didn't say it earlier, but nice call out to Bad Religion. Thank you. Love Bad Religion. Yeah. I feel like because it's going to open up, this is going to be required viewing going forward, especially as we get into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Thor Love and Thunder, and whatever else we see. They nailed down Harry Styles. They're not going to not use him.
Yeah.
So utilizing these galactic characters, you might actually be introduced to another version of Marvel, like the actual blonde Kree, Captain Marvel, the original Marvel Captain Marvel. You might see more of that going forward, and that will include the Celestials. Yeah, now the Celestials sticking out of the Earth, which, by the way, would still have killed us all.
Yes.
I actually saw a video on that where it's like that thing's too big to have not destroyed the tides.
Yeah, you get, one volcanic eruption on that side of the world, and then you have a year without a summer, and you have a pandemic and crop failure everywhere.
Yep.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
These things have consequences.
Yeah. I mean,
the wizard. Come on.
The wizard. Yes, exactly. When all nothing makes sense, blame the wizard. I have to say that even in negative discourse with this movie, I do feel like this is a movie where it engenders conversation. Mike brought it up. We can still have a conversation about this movie, good or bad, still coming away with good. I'm with Laurel. Some of its parts. It's it's greater than the sum of its parts. The discourse is so much more polite than having to deal with Snyder Cut discourse, which is
Yeah.
It's the best ever. Shut up.
Well said.
I'm not going to say
Tom
anything.
Green and I went an hour and 40 on the Snyder Cut, so just solo, just complaining about it. So
Oh my God.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
at the end of the
I
day,
know
we're
crazy
fans.
pills.
It's also like we're fans. If you enjoy it, you have something to say about it. Great.
Good for you.
We don't have to tear each other down, and you
Right.
know, like it could just simply be, it's not for me. That is a fine answer to any piece of art. You don't need to, tear it down with like every part of you. Like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. No, it's not.
Right.
It's just a movie. Yeah, it didn't jive with you. That's okay. Or it really did, and someone else it didn't. Then you have to shame them. No, you have to love it. You've got to think it's the greatest thing ever. It's like, no, you don't. It's okay.
It's like that meme of like the guy on the far end of the urinals just taking a pee, and some guy has to come up right in the urinal right next to him and go, I hated Last Jedi, and here's why you should too. Oh man, this was a great conversation, guys.
Yeah.
I always feel smarter talking to you, so thank you.
That goes both ways. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you guys on. We'll definitely have to have you back again at some point. Yes. Maybe over the summer. Maybe there was a summer blockbuster that we haven't covered yet that we need you guys back on.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the other Jurassic movies. We covered Jurassic Park years ago. We haven't done any of the other Jurassic movies at all.
I have a pet theory about the latest Jurassic World movie. So
that they didn't care enough about. Nobody cares enough about the new characters. They had to bring the old cast back in.
Yes.
Well, there is that. You were saying, Laurel, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I have a theory about the Fallen Kingdom, but I can save that for...
You got to say the theory.
Oh, I think it's an adaptation of Wuthering Heights.
Really?
I'm going to go ahead and leave that there.
Okay. Now you're going to make me actually see this. I haven't seen the second one. Closest I came to seeing the second movie is when I used it as a ruse to get Mike to his surprise birthday party.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I watched it on a flight, and not my favorite of all of them, but I still think it's certainly watchable.
Yeah. It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, where can we? I know we covered this earlier. Oh, thank you. Please, Matt, rewatch that movie. Thank you for joining us. Derek, Laurel, where can we find your podcast, and where can we find you on the socials?
Oh my. Okay, so you can find us pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. We are on social media. We're on Twitter at The Midnight Myth. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram at Midnight Myth Podcast. We are most responsive on Twitter, so if you ever want to say hi, we are always waiting to hear from you. We also, if you head over to our feed today, just dropped a promo for, we don't have enough going on with our 13-month-old and our full-time jobs and our other podcasts, so I decided to start another one. And in March of 2022, I will be premiering Sleep and Sorcery, which is a folklore and fantasy-inspired sleep story and meditation series. So that should be a lot of fun. If you are someone who is an insomniac and also a nerd, I will be telling stories to lull you into a wonderful sleep while you spend time in the Shire with hobbits, etc. So
my wife would love that.
Yeah,
I really feel like she would. She's all about like trying to use meditative music to help her to lull herself to sleep. I think that'd be perfect because she's a huge Hobbit nerd. So
yeah, it should be fun. So keep an eye out for more about that. We're targeting March to release the first episode, and there's a promo available today. So definitely check us out at Sleep and Sorcery. And watch out for the 200th episode of The Midnight Myth, too, in a couple of weeks. And we have not yet unveiled what our topic is going to be, but we did just solidify it. We are also going to hope to do a Q&A. So if you have any questions for us at The Midnight Myth, please hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or on our website, midnightmyth.com.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And as for Mike and I, we host our own podcast, Geek Salad. You can check us out wherever you get your podcast. So essentially, once you start listening to the Midnight Myth and you haven't listened to our regular podcast, we're there too. So Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that fun stuff. We are also most active on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio. We are on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast, though. Don't forget, if you like this video, if you like what you're seeing here, please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up, share. What did you think of the Eternals? Was it worth a rewatch, as Max just brought up? Is this something you want to rewatch, or have you not seen it because you heard it wasn't very good? Check it out on Disney Plus. Leave a polite comment below about your thoughts on it. And yeah, so guys, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Oh, thank you
so much. Thank you so much. And until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
Go forth and be nerdful. Talk to you later.